Hello YouTube and welcome to the next routes learning video. On today's video we're going to be looking at the brand new Armstrong Powerhouse Class 456 and driving one of the scenarios which came with it, which is the 2104 London Victoria to West Croydon service, a distance of just under 12 miles, and along the way we will be calling at Battersea Park, Clapham Junction, Wandsworth Common, Balham, Streatham Hill, West Norwood, Gipsy Hill, Crystal Palace, Norwood Junction, and finally West Croydon. The Class 456 has been in service since 1991 and was manufactured by Brell York. It is a BR second generation Mark III EMU and was constructed between 1990 and 1991, with a refurbishment taking place between 2005 and 2007. A total of 24 Class 456s were built, formed of 2 coaches per train with a maximum capacity of 152 seats. The maximum speed of these trains is 75 miles per hour, the weight is 72.5 tonnes, with a power output of 500 horsepower per unit. And indeed our train today is made up of 2 Class 456 units, with the front unit being in Connex livery and the rear unit, as you can see here, being in Network Southeast livery. Once in the cab of the Class 456, the first thing that we need to do is move the reversing handle to the central neutral position, so I'm just going to do that now. And at that point we then need to reset the AWS self-test sequence. Now I'm going to put on the headlights by pressing the H key, and because it's getting dark I'm going to press it 3 times to put on the night headlights along with the marker light. Now we need to jump into the rear cab. And I've just gone to the wrong cab there, so now we're in the rear cab. And so we just need to jump into here to turn on the tail lights so that we have red lights on the rear of the train. And so now that we're back at the front of the train, just to go through, we have down here a standard West Code 3-step brake with steps 1, 2, and then step 3, which is full service. There is a final 4th step, which is the emergency setting, though we certainly won't be using that on the journey today. I'll try and not go above step 2 braking, but there may be a couple of occasions when we need to use step 3 full service braking. Over here we have the power controller, which is a 4-step power controller, steps 1 to 4 as you can see there, and as the train accelerates up to around 27 or 28 miles per hour, you will notice it cut out momentarily as it switches from series to parallel mode automatically. The next thing I'm going to do now is open the windows. As I'm sure you've seen from previous videos, I do like to drive with the windows open, as you can hear the noises of the train much more clearly, and you can also hear the noise of the air rushing past outside. I also need to turn on the saloon lighting so that the passengers have lights, so I've done that now. And lastly, you can see that we have a clear signal ahead, so what I'm going to do now is turn off the driver reminder appliance because we have a green signal. And now we've gone through all of that, we're pretty much ready to depart. One final thing that we need to do is just change the destination blind on the front of the train. So I'm just going to hold the F8 key here, and now you can see it changing. And in fact we just went past West Croydon, so I press 7 to change it back up again, and so now I've set the destination to West Croydon. And as you probably noticed, the one on the rear of the train was already set to West Croydon, so now the destination displays are set. That's everything that you need to do to set up the Class 456 ready for departure. I just realised that I forgot to put the reversing handle in forward for a moment there. Normally you would put it in neutral while you're stopped, and then put it into forward when it's time to start moving. Departing from London Victoria, the starting speed limit is 15 miles per hour, and we've got around 1¼ miles to go to the next stop, which is Battersea Park. So as we approach 15 miles per hour, I'm now going to shut off power and allow the train to coast until we can accelerate further. The next speed change will be an increase to 20 miles per hour in around 1/4 of a mile's time. One of the things you may well notice with the Class 456 is that it looks kind of similar to the Class 321, both on the exterior and the interior, and I believe that they're based off the same design, though the Class 456 is geared for higher acceleration and a lower top-end speed, as it was designed much more for stop-start services than the Class 321, which was, I think, slightly more for express services. Just after we've crossed this point to the right and just before the overbridge coming up, we can then accelerate up towards 20 miles per hour. So I'm going to accelerate just as we enter this next point here. I'm using a low power setting to bring us up towards 20. As you can see, we're accelerating fairly quickly there, and now we're at 20 already. So I'm just shutting off the power momentarily. In a moment we will start climbing on a 1 in 68 uphill gradient, which you can see the gradient change just here now. So at that point I'm then going to need to go between steps 1 and 2 power to try and maintain the speed and ensure that we don't gain or lose too much. I have now gone into step 1 power, and I'm just keeping an eye on the speedometer just to make sure that we are controlled. In fact, we're still losing a bit too much speed, so I'm just increasing the power slightly more now. In a moment the speed limit will be going up to 45 miles per hour, so we will be able to accelerate towards that, though we won't actually get to 45 before I shut off power and prepare to brake for Battersea Park station. So I've just pulled the power back again as we have now reached 20 miles per hour, and as you can see we have now just passed the 45 mile per hour speed board. So I'm going to accelerate towards that just before this next AWS ramp that you can see coming up now. We are now crossing the River Thames, and the landmark and great building on the left there is Battersea Power Station. Chatham Main Line and the lines towards Kent, and also the South London line towards London Bridge, now diverge to the left here. And as we now reach 35 miles per hour, I'm now going to shut off power and allow the train to coast. I am going to brake for Battersea Park Station just before the platform, aiming to enter the platform at around 25 miles per hour. And we do need to stop at the other end of the platform where the S sign is. As you can see, we are now approaching Battersea Park Station, so I am now going to start braking, and so I've now made a step 2 brake application just to ensure that we slow down to 25 in time, and now just going to temporarily reduce to step 1 and then increase the braking as we get closer to the end of the platform. And so now I'm just going to fan the brakes between step 1 and 2 to bring us to a nice stop here. You can now see the S sign just coming up on the left hand side at the end there. In fact, I'm just going to release the brakes momentarily because I feel we've probably slowed down slightly too early there. And we should now be stopped in about the right place. Departing Battersea Park, the starting speed limit is 45 miles per hour, and we've got around 1.5 miles to go to the next stop, which is Clapham Junction. So my first impressions of the Class 456 is that it's a considerable improvement over the Dovetail Games version. The physics feel a lot more realistic, the sounds are much better, textures are much better, and of course you've got a choice of several liveries, including South West Trains livery, which have come with this. So I think it's much better value for money than anything you'd get from Dovetail Games. So I personally really like this train, and I can see myself driving it quite a lot in the future. Indeed, I have already made quite a number of journeys on the South London Network add-on, so the journey I've picked today is one that I haven't actually covered yet. It's one of the few scenarios that came with the train that I hadn't already covered the journey for. And so parts of this journey will have been covered, such as the section between Norwood Junction and West Croydon, but for the most part we're travelling over a new route, which has yet to be covered. I am now just going to apply the brakes slightly, as we are going downhill at the moment on a gradient of 1 in 90. I just want to try and ensure that we don't break the speed limit. Slowed down just slightly too much there, in fact. Didn't quite need to slow down that far. In a moment the speed limit will be going up to 60 miles per hour, however there's no point in accelerating, as the speed limit after that will be dropping to 20. Gradient has now levelled, and the 60 mile per hour board here is around a third of a mile from the 20 mile per hour speed restriction, so I'm just going to allow the train to continue to coast. And so what we're looking out for now is a warning board for the 20 mile per hour speed restriction. I do apologise for the lag here, slightly annoying, and you can see the 20 mile per hour speed restriction just here, or should I say the warning for it. So I have now applied the brakes initially to step 1 and now up to step 2. Mistakenly step 3 there for a moment. So I've just pulled it back to step 2 braking. Now I'll reduce as we get closer to the 20 limit. In fact, it looks like I might have braked slightly too early there. The speed limit is dropping to 20 miles per hour just before the platform here at Clapham Junction. So yes, I did slow down slightly too early. And you can now see the 20 speed board. There is no exact marker on the platform here at Clapham to tell us exactly where to stop, so it's a bit of a guessing game. So what I'm looking out for is the second set of stairs that you will see in the platform on the left hand side, and at that point I believe that should be roughly the right stopping place for Clapham Junction station. And so you can see the second set of stairs just here, so I have just now applied the brakes into step 2, and I believe this is about the right place to stop. Departing from Clapham Junction, the starting speed limit is 20 miles per hour, and we've got around 1 1/3 miles to go to the next stop, which is Wandsworth Common. As we reach 20 miles per hour, I'm then going to shut off the power and allow the train to coast until we can accelerate further. The speed limit will soon be going up to 60 miles per hour. Indeed, we're just passing the 60 mile per hour speed board now. I'm going to accelerate towards 60 miles per hour just as we reach this overbridge here. So for the moment we're following the path of the Brighton main line, and indeed you could also drive this route on the London to Brighton add-on, but once we've passed Balham we will then be turning off the Brighton main line and going straight down towards Crystal Palace before then turning towards Norwood Junction and finally West Croydon. I've still got a number of other videos to make on the South London network. There are a couple of other routes and journeys that are yet to be covered, and a number of return journeys to also cover, so I really do like the scope and variety that we have on the South London network. I am soon hoping to get the EPB, hopefully in the Steam sale, the summer sale, which should be coming up soon, so long as it comes down to a decent price. And so with the EPB I would like to cover the London Victoria to London Bridge journey via the long way around, which I haven't yet covered. So now we're reaching 50 miles per hour, I'm idling the power and allowing the train to coast. At this overbridge we've got 2/5 of a mile to go to Wandsworth Common, and I'm going to brake step 2 just as we cross this AWS ramp here. So now that we've crossed the AWS ramp, I've made a step 2 brake application, which should bring our speed down quite nicely. I don't want to enter any platform at faster than 30 miles per hour, preferably towards 25. It looks like we were slowing down slightly too quickly, so I've just reduced to step 1 braking momentarily, and now I'm going to increase back to step 2. As we head into the platform here, we do need to stop at the 4-car stop sign, which is just a little bit after the footbridge that you can see coming up. So I'm fanning the brakes again between step 1 and 2. In fact, I'm going to release them completely again just for a moment, and now you can see the 4-car stop sign just coming up. So I'm going to aim to stop next to that. Departing Wandsworth Common, the starting speed limit is 60 miles per hour, and we've got just over half a mile to go to the next stop, which is Balham. We now have a warning for an upcoming speed reduction to 50 miles per hour. However, this won't directly affect us as we won't be able to get to 50 before I need to cut off power and start braking for Balham. And indeed, you can see Balham station coming up just ahead. At this point now, I'm now going to idle the power and allow the train to coast, and in a moment I'm going to brake just before the platform, aiming to enter the platform at no faster than 25 to 30 miles per hour. I just braked slightly harder than I planned there by going up to step 3 by mistake, but we're now in step 2 of braking. And as you probably just noticed, there's a slight bug there which happens in train simulators sometimes. The train that's just overtaken us on the fast line has the doors wide open. It's quite annoying when that bug happens. It generally seems to happen on this route more than most. Unfortunately, there's not a lot that can be done about it. And from what I understand, other people have seen the same train with the doors wide open as well. So here is the 4-car stop point. Departing from Balham, the starting speed limit is 50 miles per hour, though it's quickly going down to 40 and then 30 miles per hour. And we've got just over 1 mile to go to the next stop, which is Streatham Hill. So as you probably just noticed, we have now passed a warning for the upcoming 40 mile per hour speed restriction. And indeed the limit is going down to 40 just as we cross these points here. We're going to go straight on, whereas the Brighton main line diverges to the right at this point. As we reach 30 miles per hour, I'm now shutting off the power to allow the train to coast, as the 30 mile per hour speed board is now just coming up. In fact, you can see it just here. So the speed limit has now dropped to 30. In a moment, the speed limit will then be increasing to 50 miles per hour, and we're going to start going uphill on a 1 in 99 uphill gradient. Indeed, there's actually quite a number of gradients on this journey that are fairly steep, possibly steeper than you'd expect to find in London, but this part of London seems to be quite hilly in places, and so we do need to watch our speed on the uphill and downhill gradients. Speed limit is now going up to 50 miles per hour, and we are now starting the 1 in 99 uphill climb. So just as we approach this signal here, I'm now going to go into full power just to accelerate a little, though the platform at Streatham Hill is coming up shortly. I'm going to aim to brake just before the platform, and we need to stop at the forecast sign, which is just after the footbridge in the platform here. So as we're now getting just above 35 miles per hour, I'm now going to shut off the power. And I'm just going to apply the brakes in a moment, so I'm now making a step 2 brake application just to bring our speed down. The uphill gradient will help us to slow down quicker than we would otherwise do. And so you can see the footbridge coming up now, and I'm going to be looking out for the forecast sign shortly after that. Just fanning the brakes a bit there. I accidentally put it up to step 2 when I only meant to put it into step 1. As you can see, we're now stopping at the 4 and 6 car stop sign. Departing from Streatham Hill, the starting speed limit is 50 miles per hour, and we've got around 1¼ miles to go to the next stop, which is West Norwood. And just here we were starting still on a 1 in 99 uphill gradient, so I did apply the power just before the brakes were fully released to prevent the train from rolling back due to the uphill gradient. We're now about to pass through a tunnel. I'm not sure what the name of this tunnel is. If someone could possibly let me know in the comments, that would be great. I was finding it difficult to find tunnel information for this route online. And so we're going to continue to accelerate for a moment, and then I'm going to shut off the power at 40. And the speed limit will be dropping to 30 miles per hour just after the upcoming signal here. So I'm now going to shut off power at 40 miles per hour, as I said. And just as we approach this signal here, I'm now going to apply the brakes for the upcoming 30 mile per hour speed limit. Initially step 1, and now going up to step 2, as I believe that is the 30 board coming up just here. Indeed it is. So we're now going to cross these points to the right. And what we're looking out for now is a warning for an upcoming 20 mile per hour speed restriction, which is 1/4 mile from the 20 limit itself. I'm just going to give us 1 step of power, as I just felt we're losing just a little bit too much speed there. Then I'm going to shut off as soon as we get back to 30 miles per hour. And so we're at 30 once again. I believe we've now reached the speed warning for the upcoming 20 mile per hour speed restriction. The warning is under 1/4 mile from the limit itself, and I'm just going to brake now into step 1 as we enter this left-hand curve here, just to try and ensure that we slow down in time. I've released again and now reapplying the brakes, and the speed limit does drop to 20 miles per hour just before the platform here at West Norwood. We're going downhill initially into the platform, and then we go straight into an up 1 in 68 gradient as we enter the platform here. And I am now looking for the forecast stop sign. The steep uphill gradient will bring our speed off quite quickly. And I can now see the forecast stop sign just coming up. So I've made a step 2, step 1 and step 2 brake application, which should have stopped us in about the right place. Departing West Norwood, the starting speed limit is 20 miles per hour, and we are starting on a 1 in 68 uphill gradient, so once again I did apply power before the brakes were fully released to prevent any rollback from the train. And at this point we've got just under a mile to go to the next stop, which is Gipsy Hill. As we now approach 20 miles per hour, I am going to start reducing the power just to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. The speed limit here is now going up to 35 miles per hour. And we can accelerate as we get close to the end of this right-hand curve here. So I've just cut off the power for a moment to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. And now as we're approaching the end of the right-hand curve, I'm going to accelerate up towards 35 miles per hour. Along here the gradient does now shallow to up 1 in 95, which means that we can accelerate a little bit quicker. And as we reach 35 miles per hour, I'm then going to go between steps 1 and 2 power to try and maintain the speed. I have now reduced to step 1 of power, and if we lose too much speed I will increase to step 2. The speed limit in a moment here is now going up to 50 miles per hour, and we can accelerate just before the next AWS ramp. However, we will need to idle at the signal which is coming up anyway, due to the close proximity now of Gipsy Hill station. So I've briefly gone into full power, just so when I shut off power we don't lose too much speed. And now as we're passing the signal, I'm now idling the power completely. I'm going to aim to brake just before the platform here, and we need to stop at the S marker at the end of the platform. So I have now made a step 2 brake application to bring our speed down. I'm just going to reduce it to step 1 now to ensure that we don't slow down too quickly, due to having to travel the length of the platform before stopping. You can now see the S marker coming up, and I've just released the brakes momentarily. We are still going uphill, which is helping us to slow down a bit quicker than maybe we needed to. So I've just been fanning the brakes there between step 1 and step 2 to try and bring us to a good stop. Departing from Gipsy Hill, the starting speed limit is 50 miles per hour, and we did start there on an up 1 in 103 gradient, which meant that once again I had to ensure that I applied power in such a way that we didn't roll back. And at this point we've got around 3/4 of a mile to go to the next stop, which is Crystal Palace. We are now approaching another tunnel, and we do have a Morpeth board warning just before we enter the tunnel for an upcoming 15 mile per hour speed restriction. The Morpeth board warning does come slightly early because the speed limit drops to 15 immediately as we leave this tunnel. So as we travel through the tunnel, I'm going to idle the power and coast once we reach 40 miles per hour, and then I'm looking for a repeater signal that we will go past in this tunnel. And as we go past the repeater signal, I'm then going to start braking for the 15 mile per hour speed restriction. So at this point I've now idled the power, and we've just passed the repeater signal there. So I've initially made a step 1 brake application, and I'm now going to up it to step 2, which should bring our speed down about right. You now see the end of the tunnel coming up, and the 15 mile per hour speed board is immediately after the exit of the tunnel. We are now down to 20. In fact, no, it's immediately before the exit to the tunnel, as I've just seen there. That was slightly incorrect information. And so we are now down to below 15 miles per hour in time, and this is Crystal Palace Station coming up now. Just as we enter the platform, the gradient starts going downhill at 1 in 80, which means that we will need to use our brakes to ensure that we don't end up speeding up too much. And I'm aiming to stop at the forecast sign, which is just coming up. You can see the CCTV screens on the left there with the 3 and forecast stop marker just before that. So I'm now going up to step 2. I might even just for a moment there need step 3 braking due to the downhill gradient that we are currently on. Departing Crystal Palace, the starting speed limit is 25 miles per hour. You may have noticed the speed limit went up to 25 just as we entered the platform. We are starting on the down 1 in 80 gradient, so I do need to be careful that we don't break the speed limit. And indeed, as we reach 20 miles per hour, I'm then going to shut off the power completely and allow the train to coast. So we've now reached 20. I'm now shutting off power. In a moment, the gradient will be levelling out, and just for a moment, and the speed limit will be going up to 50 miles per hour. So the gradient has now just levelled out for a moment, and then as you can probably see there, the gradient is now going to fall again at 1 in 80. So I am going to increase the power to accelerate for a moment. However, I am going to idle the power as we reach 40 miles per hour due to the downhill gradient that we are currently going down. So as we've now reached 40 miles per hour, I've shut off the power and I'm allowing the train to coast. Speed limit will shortly be dropping to 40 miles per hour and then just shortly after that to 20 miles per hour. The moment we see the next signal, which will be displaying a yellow aspect due to turning off, I'm now going to make a brake application to slow for the 40 mile per hour speed restriction. And now I'm just going to continue to brake as there is an upcoming 20 mile per hour speed restriction as we cross the points and turn towards the main line into Norwood Junction. And indeed you can see the points just coming up now, so the speed limit just here has now dropped to 20. I'm now releasing the brakes at 20 miles per hour and I'm going to allow the train to coast. In a moment, just after rounding this curve, or as we start to round it, the gradient is now going to fall quite drastically at 1 in 52, so I am going to need to use the brakes along this section to control our speed. I do need to take note here that we do have a single yellow signal. However, the next signal I believe is at the other end of the platform at Norwood Junction, so this signal being single yellow indicates that we are cleared into Norwood Junction station. The gradient is levelling off here now that we've rounded this point to the left and we're rejoining the main line. Speed limit here is about to go up to 45 miles per hour. However, you can see the platforms at Norwood Junction coming up, so there's not much point in accelerating very far. Just as we pass the upcoming 45 speedboard, I am just going to increase the power slightly as we reach the next point, just to bring our speed up towards 25. But we certainly won't go any faster than that as we are on the approach to Norwood Junction station. So I'm just going to increase the power now and accelerate up towards 25 miles per hour. I'm now going to shut off the power completely, and at Norwood Junction there is no forecast stop marker. However, I'm going to aim to stop by the first platform mirror, which we see, which I believe is where a 4-coach train would stop. And so the platform mirror is coming up just at the end of the roof here. You just see it on the left now. And so this should be about the right stopping place. Departing Norwood Junction, the starting speed limit is 45 miles per hour, though it is quickly going down to 20 miles per hour as we need to cross tracks to the right. And we've got around 1 3/4 miles to go to our final stop, which is West Croydon. And indeed, we have covered this section between Norwood Junction and West Croydon in a previous video, which was the Surrey Quays to West Croydon video. However, we did go into a main platform in that video, whereas in this one we will be going into a bay platform. As we've now changed tracks, the speed limit is now increasing and we could accelerate now we've had that AWS warning. And so the speed limit just here has gone up to 60 miles per hour, though the AWS warning is for an upcoming 20 mile per hour speed restriction, which isn't too far away from here. And so I'm just going to idle the power at this next signal, and we're about to start climbing quite steeply on a 1 in 68 uphill gradient. And as we can now see Selhurst Depot on the right hand side there, I'm just going to make an initial step 1 brake application. The gradient will help us to slow down quicker, and as we approach the 20 mile per hour speed board in a moment, I will then release the brakes as we should be down to 20 in time. And in fact, you can see the 20 limit just here. So I'm now releasing the brakes and I'm just going to allow the train to coast. In a moment we will start going downhill. And we're going to be going down as steep as 1 in 45. So I am going to need to use the brakes for speed control. And so we are now on the downhill section. I'm going to make a step 1 brake application in a moment. This should control our speed. We will lose a little bit of speed, but if we drop too much towards 15, I will then release the brakes and allow the train to coast back up towards 20. So I have now released the brakes momentarily, and you can see our speed is quickly going back up to 20, so I'm just going to reapply once again. And just as we reach this overbridge here, the gradient is levelling out, so in a moment I'm going to release the brakes, which I'm just going to do now, and allow the train to coast. The speed limit in a moment is going up to 60 miles per hour, and we will be able to accelerate to that at the next AWS ramp after the 60 mile per hour speed board, and you can see the 60 mile per hour board is coming up now. We've now reached the next AWS ramp, so I'm accelerating up towards 60 miles per hour. We are now going to get a double yellow and then a single yellow signal as we are on the approach to West Croydon. As I mentioned, we are going into the bay platform rather than the main platform. We've also got an upcoming warning for a 45 mile per hour speed restriction, so I'm just going to idle the power at this warning here as we're doing around 35 miles per hour. And I'm going to brake for an upcoming 15 mile per hour speed limit as we cross tracks, just as we reach this signal here. So as we pass this single yellow signal, which you will always get if you're going into the bay platform at West Croydon, I'm going to make an initial step 2 brake application, and then reduce to step 1 as we get closer to the upcoming point. The speed limit will be dropping to 15 as we cross the track to the right hand side. I've just reduced the brakes momentarily and now I'm reapplying them. We are now reaching the upcoming 15 limit. You can see the board there, and you can also just see the point coming up now. So I've now released the brakes at 15 miles per hour and I'm just going to allow the train to coast. I'm going to brake in a moment to try and enter the platform here at West Croydon at no faster than 10 miles per hour. And so we are now entering the platform at 10 miles per hour. I'm going to release the brakes and then gradually just fan the brakes as we get closer to the buffers at the end. I'm going to stop just after the buffer stops themselves have disappeared. And so here we are, arrival at West Croydon. Thank you very much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed the video. Please don't forget that you can find me on Facebook. The link for my Facebook page is in the description of this video. And also, if you value the work that I do and would like to financially support me towards the cost of new DLC and also towards the cost of new computer equipment, then please visit my Patreon page for further information, the link again of which is in the description of this video. Again, thank you for watching.